This story has been on my mind since it happened, and I don't think it'll ever leave my memory. I live up north in a lovely, friendly town. I was an atheist and didn't believe in any spiritual or paranormal stuff, but this incident changed everything. I went to stay the night at my aunt's house, who lives in a big cabin in a wooded area with my grandpa. Grandpa used to be an avid hunter. I was getting everything from my mother's car, bags, pillows, blankets, and everything else. I went into the house, dropped everything on the couch, and got some water from the fridge. Later, my mom left to return home, and my brother was left with my aunt. I felt generous and helped clean the house and sweep some wood debris. I went outside, chopped some wood for the fire, and stacked it up for my grandpa. I got up and turned around to go outside to help cook, but as I got up, I saw something standing. I couldn't tell if it was looking at me or if my mind was playing tricks on me. I decided not to overthink it and went inside. I chopped up some potatoes for dinner because my aunt was making soup. Everything was going well, but I soon remembered the figure I might have seen earlier. Then I heard what sounded like a person. They were saying, "Hey you, sir, can you help me with something real quick?" I was spooked and confused. My aunt lives in the middle of the woods. The nearest house was another 20 to 30 miles away. I thought it might have been a camper, so I answered, "Hello? Where are you?" I got no response. I had a gut feeling something was wrong, so I slowly backed away while staring in the direction of the voice. When I got to the door, I ran inside and locked it immediately. My aunt saw me and asked why I was inside instead of outside doing what I was supposed to do. I didn't acknowledge her question. I was so confused and afraid that I was frozen, staring outside into the pitch-black darkness. I snapped out of it when my aunt grabbed and shook my shoulder. She asked, "What's wrong? Are you all right?" I didn't say anything for a few seconds, and when I did, I said, "Auntie, I think there's something outside." She looked at me in confusion, like I was playing some sort of trick, but she knew I wasn't the kind of person to play games. I said, "I don't know, someone or something just asked me for help, and that's all." She asked where, and I pointed into the darkness, which felt like a void. I looked over and saw my aunt back away 3 steps, with a blank expression. She yelled, "Get away from the door." She grabbed my hand, walked me into her room, and gathered everyone, including my brother, into the same room. Once we were all inside, she locked the door and closed the blinds. She grabbed her sage, quickly sprinkled it around, and burned it. Since she's shamanic and believes burning sage clears negative energy, I felt a little more comfortable after she did this. I asked, trembling, "What's going on? Are we going to be okay?" My aunt ignored me and whispered something to my grandpa. He looked terrified and stared at me. My aunt calmly walked over to me and said, "Honey, be honest with me. Did you see anyone?" I hesitated and said, "No, only a voice." She stood up, and my grandpa's expression worsened. After standing there for a while, she told me faintly so my brother wouldn't hear, "You just encountered a skinwalker, dear." Fear surged through my body, and I began shaking worse. A skinwalker? That's just a myth, a legend. But this wasn't easy to dismiss. I had just heard a man's voice in the middle of nowhere in the dark. After an hour of waiting, my aunt got her rifle, helped my grandpa up, and told us to stay close to her. We went outside and quickly got into her car. We left everything behind, and all I had was my phone, which I am using to tell this story. We backed out and took the roads and trails out of there. My aunt drove like a bat out of hell, staying silent the whole way back to town. I was getting drowsy, but couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. My aunt and grandpa stayed at our house for a couple of weeks after that. On the 5th week, they left. Before they did, my aunt gave me a protective crystal and some sage, just in case. A day after they left, we never heard from her or my grandpa again. My family traveled a lot because we were a military family. If we had the choice, we would have stayed in one place forever. Now, because we traveled so much, we had a fair share of stories: getting robbed, natural disasters, car crashes, but none like this one. And what makes it suspicious is that it happened only to me. It was January 14th in New York. I was turning 9 in 5 weeks, so if anyone else had a birthday as a kid, you'd know I was hyped. It was already bad enough that I had anxiety and insomnia, so I would stay up nearly every night. This night was no different. After a good dinner of spaghetti, I went straight to bed. My little brothers were already asleep, and my parents were relaxing in their room watching TV. I tried to get some sleep by putting my head under the pillow. Every now and then, I would peek at the clock: 9:11, 10:13, 11:20. I got up to check if my parents were still awake. Sure enough, they were asleep, the TV still on. I went back to my room to try sleeping again. It got cold fast. I looked outside, and it was snowing lightly. I looked at my clock: it was 11:27. I felt slightly annoyed at how I couldn't sleep. I flopped back on my bed and wrapped myself in a blanket burrito. I managed to fall asleep eventually. Then, I woke up terrified. I looked at the clock: it was off. I slowly walked to see if it was unplugged. It wasn't. I started to cry a little. Then I heard a noise outside. It sounded like a mix of a goat and a coyote. I looked out the window. It was heavily snowing by then. I couldn't see anything clearly, not even the houses on the other side. Then I heard something fall and break downstairs. I started to have a panic attack. This happens rarely. I instinctively took out my pocket knife, which my dad had given me when I was in Cub Scouts. I quickly opened it and walked to the door. Something sounded like it was sprinting toward my door with light footsteps, then slammed the door shut. It opened inward. I ran back to my bed and held up my dog-stuffed animal, which I named 10. I decided to man up, or little boy up, and ran to the door. I opened it, holding my knife to the side. Nothing was there. I ran downstairs. Again, nothing was there. I went to the kitchen. A bunch of my mom's spice shakers had broken. I forgot which specific ones, but they were expensive. Fortunately, both of my parents are heavy sleepers. I looked at the microwave: no time. It seemed that all the power was off, probably because of the snowstorm. For some reason, my little brain decided to walk outside. I put on shoes and a coat and went to the back door. Nothing. Nothing at all was out there. I heard another noise, though, the same noise. It sounded like it came from the woods. I went to the fence and peeked through a little crack between the planks. I saw a dead deer lying there. I won't go into details, but it looked like a pile of ketchup mixed with squished tomatoes. The smell was awful. It seemed fresh. I walked back to the porch, very disturbed. I sat down on a snow-covered chair, slightly shivering. I heard heavy footsteps coming from the woods, but as they got closer, they sounded strange. I walked back into the house slowly, trying not to alert whatever it was. Then I went upstairs and locked the door, both locks. I heard a gravely deep moan coming from upstairs, just as I was about to walk up. I took the last step and stood in front of the closet. The sound stopped. I'd had enough by then and jerked the door open. Again, there was nothing there. Then I heard scurrying in the living room. I jumped down the stairs, which was a bad decision. I tripped and landed flat on my face. I woke up dazed, but not in pain. I looked toward the living room and saw a large, tall, bulky figure. It seemed gray, but I wasn't sure. It had large, empty eye holes, and its mouth looked like melted cheese. I stayed on the floor. The thing didn't move. It just stared at me blankly. Then its jaw slowly gaped open, about the size of our TV. It ran off into the kitchen, and I heard the back door close. I lay on the floor for a while. Then I got up, cleaned my nose. It wasn't broken but very bruised, and slowly crawled into bed to sleep peacefully. My parents woke up to find the spices broken, blood on the floor, and a dead deer outside. I told them what had happened, but they didn't believe me. I remember it clearly to this day, and they still don't believe me. Luckily, we moved to Texas, where there's no more snow for me. My fiancé and I moved to Sweden a while ago to visit our relatives. We moved into a small apartment that looked decent. My new mate, Patrick, stayed over one night when my fiancé was off to work. I must admit, this turned out to be one of the creepiest nights of my life. We were up late drinking and watching TV when the electricity suddenly went out. It didn't really bother me or Patrick, so we shrugged it off. While hanging out, we suddenly heard a loud growling coming from somewhere, possibly outside, we thought. We didn't think much of it at first. After a few more hours of drinking, we decided it would be best to get some sleep and just brush it off. I wanted to be polite and offered Patrick my bed in the bedroom while I claimed the living room sofa for myself. Something told me he didn't want to be alone, but I didn't ask since I knew he was a cool guy and nothing ever seemed to bother him. An hour later, I was zoning out, staring at the ceiling. Bloody hell, I was stupidly tired but couldn't fall asleep. Something felt off, and I just knew it. Light tapping started on the windows, and at first, I thought it was rain. But the tapping got worse and worse. I suddenly felt the urge to close the blinds and bury my head under a pillow. I quickly closed the blinds and sat back down on the sofa. The electricity had come back on, so I turned the TV on to distract myself from the non-stop tapping on the windows. Anxiety washed over me, and then I heard a loud noise to my left. My gaze quickly turned to the doorframe, where I saw an old man standing, completely still. But this wasn't a normal old man. His face didn't look human, if that makes any sense. The moment I saw him, I heard an even louder tap and instinctively glanced back at the window. When I looked back at the doorframe, the old man was gone. Everything fell silent, but I was deeply unsettled by what I had just witnessed. I thought about going to my bedroom to wake Patrick, but I couldn't bring myself to leave the living room. I convinced myself that waking him was unnecessary, so I let it slide. I lay back down on the sofa and tried to fall asleep despite the eerie events. Surprisingly, I managed to drift off. When I woke up the next morning, my fiancé was home, and Patrick was talking to her in the kitchen. I felt a little hungover from the night before. As I walked into the kitchen, Patrick turned to me with a concerned look and asked, "Are you okay, dude? I tried waking you up last night because it sounded like you were choking." That shocked me. I mean, wouldn't I have been aware if I was choking? Patrick went on to explain that I had been lying there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. He had tried several times to wake me after hearing me screaming and choking unconsciously. It freaked him out so much that he didn't contact me for months afterward. It's been over a year since that night, and I'll never forget it. I have no way of explaining what happened and wouldn't even know where to begin. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.